On YouTube. So yesterday I did my NFL mock draft, and today I wanted to do my way too early NBA mock draft. So obviously there's no exact formula for how the mock draft is going to go draft order wise. I used the latest draft order that NBADraft.net had for their last mock draft. I'm also going to put that mock draft in the description below. There are a few other ones. I've seen a few on YouTube, but like I said, not a whole lot yet. So basically how I did this was more by my player rankings and where I think they'll end up actually going when it comes to being draft time, I believe in July. I have to look that up again. But like I said, this is early for it, and it's about middle of the college basketball season. So here we go. Starting with the number 30 overall pick, of course with the Golden State Warriors, I have them taking the 6'4" shooting guard from Arizona, Alonzo Trier. So a few things that I like about Alonzo Trier: he creates offense, he's a good shooter, he's a little bit more athletic shooting guard, and you know what, I think that he'll fit right in as maybe a 6th, 7th man in Golden State, another guy that will really fit right in with that system. And you know, I think he's got a lot of upside, just a freshman this year. So move on to my number 29 pick with the San Antonio Spurs. I have them taking, I want to say, Gershon Yabusele. So he is a 6'7" shooting guard and small forward out of France. Some of the things I like about him, he's good down low. He's got a very well-rounded game offensively. He can attack the rim, but he can also stretch the floor a little bit shooting. He'd be a hard guy to guard, and he's also very athletic. So again, I think a good guy for the Spurs to maybe draft and stash. He maybe has a little bit higher draft stock come July, but for right now, I've got him at the 29 spot. So move on to number 28, and I've got the Phoenix Suns in this spot. I don't remember exactly how they got there, but like I said, I just used a separate draft order. So I have them taking the 7-foot center out of Vanderbilt, Damian Jones. So Damian Jones has some very good flashes early in the year. Vanderbilt looked like a pretty solid team that could challenge Kentucky in the SEC. Some of the things I like: he's athletic for a 7-footer, and he's good on defense. So Damian Jones, a guy that's flashed a few post moves, but more of a potential guy on offense. Good for his size, obviously a 7-footer. Moves pretty well, and you know what, I think that that's a post game that can come along, but obviously it's something you got to be a little bit patient with. I believe he is only a freshman. So move on to the number 27 pick. I've got Gary Payton II, going to the 76ers, the 6'3" point guard from Oregon State. I believe he is a senior heading into this year. He's a very smart player. He's good on defense, and you know what, he can create offense. He's a good facilitator, and I think he could be a good long-term role player at point guard. I think he's a guy that will be a great leader in the NBA, a guy that could very well lead Oregon State to a tournament bid this year, a team that hasn't been great in the last few years, but got a pretty good recruiting class combined with a guy in Gary Payton who should have a very good year. Obviously, Gary Payton, the legendary point guard's son. So move on to my number 26 pick, and I've got maybe the guy who might be the college or the NCAA basketball player of the year, and that is Denzel Valentine, the 6'4", maybe 6'5", depending on what you look at, shooting guard out of Michigan State. So obviously not the most athletic guy that would go in the first round, but I think he's got a very high basketball IQ. He's a great passer, and he's a guy who can carry a team, obviously. You guys have seen what he can do at Michigan State this year. He's also got a very mature game. I think he's a guy that could step in and be a very good role player for, like I said, I didn't mention the team, to the Clippers. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. So he's a guy that could step into a team like the Clippers, you know, a team that has had a little bit of trouble with shooting guard, and I think he could be a really solid guy that could fit in well with that lineup. Really, any team like the Clippers, I think, would be very good for a guy like Denzel Valentine to go to. All right, so move on to my number 25 pick, and this is one that I really like, one that I could really see happening, and that is Wayne Selden to the Chicago Bulls, the 6'5" shooting guard out of Kansas. So Wayne Selden's a guy who really came along this year. He's been very inconsistent in his time at Kansas. You know, a guy that has shown flashes, but this year really, like I said, seems to have come along well. He's got good size for his position. A couple of the things that I like about Wayne Selden, for one, he's got, I think, like I said, I think he's got a high ceiling if you can straighten him out, which he's shown that he can do better this year. He does have a pretty high ceiling, and then he's also a good shooter, and he can defend pretty well. And that's, again, if you're able to tap into that good potential that he's really been showing this season so far. Really played well in that Oklahoma game. If you guys saw that game the other night, it was honestly a pretty exciting game. All right, so move on to my number 24 pick. And this one is for the 76ers. I've got Justin Jackson, the 6'8", small forward going to, or obviously going to the Sixers, but from North Carolina. Now, this is a guy, obviously, with tremendous size. A guy that might have gone in the draft last year. He's one of those guys that could have gone last year but decided to stay another year. And I think he's great on offense. Like I said, good size. The guy's going to take a little bit more development for his game. I don't think he's going to stay another year in college. I think it's going to be the year he goes into the draft. But I don't know about a team like the Sixers, like I said. I think this is going to be a guy that will be a good project for maybe a middle or higher team in the standings right now. Like I said, I think a guy that's been developed pretty well by Roy Williams, shown an improved game this year, and like I said, I think he'll end up being a solid NBA player. So move on to my number 23 pick, and I've got the 6'7" shooting guard from Florida State, Dwayne Bacon, going to the Atlanta Hawks. So Dwayne Bacon, a guy that has really combined well this year with that Florida State attack, a little three-headed monster with Raton and, Jesus Christ, the other one slipping me right now. I believe it is Malik Beasley. If I'm wrong about that, sorry, but I believe that is correct. So, alright, found my notes about Dwayne Bacon. So, Dwayne Bacon, athletic guy who is also a quarterback for Florida State. Obviously, I think he's pursuing his basketball career more than football, but he is a pro-style quarterback, so obviously he is an athletic guy, and he can create a ton of offense. If you watched him this year, he can drive the rim. He's a very physical offensive player. He's got great size. Obviously, he's a 6'7" shooting guard. Play a little bit of small forward. I think he's kind of mixed in with both this year with a much improved Florida State team. And, I think, like I said, I think he can create offense down low. Up high, shown that he can shoot threes mid-range and can get down low and draw some fouls. So I think he's a very versatile guy that definitely could go higher than 23 in the draft. But I think the way it's going right now, he's not really in the spotlight for Florida State, and not sure if he's 100% committed to basketball, which is why he might be able to drop a little bit lower in the draft. But anyway, move on to my number 22 pick. Another guy who I could see going higher in the draft, but I've got the 6'11" power forward, Henry Ellenson, going to the Toronto Raptors. So, obviously the Raptors right now are probably fine around the center power forward position with Jonas Valanciunas, but I definitely think it's a team that could use some depth in an improving Eastern Conference. So, a couple of things that I like about Henry Ellenson, he can run the floor extremely well, especially for a big man. If you watch him play with the U.S. team, he's great in transition, and he's good in post. He's got obviously great size of power forward, very lanky guy, and he can defend as well. So I believe a guy that can also play some decently heavy minutes, a guy that, while he does have high potential, is also a little bit NBA ready, can step in and maybe even possibly be a starter. Like I said, a guy that could go a little bit higher than 22, a guy that I could even see maybe climbing into the top 10 if he finishes off the season strong. All right, so move on to number 21 pick, and I've got Deontay Davis, the 6'10" power forward from Michigan State, going to the Boston Celtics. So I think the Celtics could use a little bit of help around the center power forward position. Olynyk's been coming through this year, but overall I think they still need more help. So a couple of things I like about Deontay Davis. He's an athletic dude. He's a good post player, hard worker, and a very good rebounder. I believe he's another freshman this year, and mixing well with a good Michigan State team. I believe very much so that him going to a team like I have going to the Boston Celtics, a team that's got a very good supporting cast of guards, could definitely be a great fit for Deontay Davis. I don't think he's going to be a star player, but I think he can be a guy maybe I like to compare him to maybe a poor man's Kenneth Faried. But I think he can definitely fit into a good role in the NBA. I think he does have a little bit of a higher ceiling than some of the guys that I've got going around him. I might be selling him short a little bit, but I do think he's a guy that could fit in very well into a system like the Celtics. All right, so move on to my number 20 pick, and I've got Steven Zimmerman, the 7-1 center out of UNLV, going to the Indiana Pacers. So the Pacers did draft Miles Turner last year, and he's been all right so far this year, but I still think they need more of a legit scoring threat down low. Jan Mahimi, Lavoy Allen, Miles Turner, they've been all right. They've been solid on defense, but just not really getting it done on offense. Seems like they have to rely entirely too much on the C.J. Miles, Paul Georges, Monte Ellis's, and George Hills of the world. So I think a guy like Steven Zimmerman will help them out drastically. A guy that seems like a confident guy that really relies on his ability. He's got great post moves. He's a good rebounder, and he's got NBA size. Obviously, it's 7'1". He can move pretty good. Like I said, good footwork in the paint. I think a guy that could be ready to go and have a pretty positive impact on a team like the Pacers in the NBA. All right, so move on to number 19, and I got Grayson Allen, the 6'4" shooting guard out of Duke, going to the Boston Celtics. So I think a guy like Grayson Allen really fits in well in a place like Boston. Grayson Allen, a pretty good shooter, a guy that's very athletic, kind of had to wait his turn at Duke a little bit, didn't have great stats coming out of the 2014-15 season, but found a bigger role this year, and he's a guy that can definitely be a top 25, top 20, maybe if he finishes out the year strong, a top 15 pick, but I think that would maybe be stretching it a little bit. So I think he's a great three-point shooter. He's good defensively. He's mainly just a good shooter overall, and he's got good size for the position. He's explosive and athletic. At first glance, not just saying it because he's white, but he doesn't look like the greatest athlete. When you watch him play, he really is, like I said, a guy that can create his own offense a little bit. He's a scoring threat, very good shooter. So I think a guy that can really fit in really well with the Celtics. All right. Now, obviously, that's if they clear their backcourt a little bit. So move on to number 18, and I've got Malik Newman, the 6'3" shooting guard out of Mississippi State, going to the Detroit Pistons. Now, Malik Newman, a guy that's can score in bunches. Very athletic guy, maybe a little bit undersized at shooting guard, but I think he's got a really explosive play, good vertical athletic guy. I think he can kind of make up for that a little bit. Like I said, just got a really natural scoring touch, and he can create offense. He's not just a scorer. He's not just a scorer for himself. He can create offense for really whoever's around him. And I think a guy like that can really fit in anywhere. But with a team like the Pistons, where they're relying so heavily on Reggie Jackson, maybe a guy that can play alongside Reggie Jackson if they kind of want to work maybe a two smaller guard system. I think they got enough size with Andre Drummond down low, and I think a guy like Malik Newman can fit in very well with the Pistons. I think that would be a very good pick for them. So at number 17, I've got Wade Baldwin, the 6'3" shooting guard out of Vanderbilt, going to the Nuggets. Now, this might be a little bit of a reach, but I think Wade Baldwin's stock has rose really as high as anyone's over the last couple months. Wade Baldwin, I think, is one of the genuine best shooters in this draft. Yes, he's a little bit undersized, a lot like Malik Newman at the shooting guard position. But there's a lot of things that I like about him. He's alert on defense. He's a very aware player. He's a good shooter, can space the floor. And like I said, doesn't look at first glance like he can be a star, but I think he's a guy that could really develop into a solid, not just rotation, but starter night in and night out in the NBA, especially with a team like the Nuggets that just needs an overhaul right now. I think that'd be a guy that's a good direction, or I like to compare him a little bit, not really his game, but just the way he could fit into a team in the NBA like Jordan Clarkson with the Lakers, just kind of fit in low-key at first, work his way up. He just kind of had that same feeling at Vanderbilt. I think he needs a team like that, also like Vanderbilt, that, a little bit underrated coming into the season, but can form into one. And that moves into my number 16 pick, which I have Isaac Copeland, the 6'9" small forward from Georgetown, going to the Denver Nuggets also. So Isaac Copeland, one of the more intriguing prospects for me. If you watch his highlights, very, very, very explosive athlete, good on both ends of the floor. Again, another guy that just really feel like he has upside, but a lot of that may be untapped. But he's shown not just flashes, but just consistent good game in the past. So he's good on both ends of the floor. Like I said, he's very athletic, can get up there, block shots, get rebounds, also create offense for you. And just it seems like a guy that can really guard. I mean, like I said, it might take a little bit of work on defense, but can really guard a lot of good players in the NBA. Might be able to be a good wing defender. So that moves into my number 15 pick. I've got the 6'3" point guard from Maryland, Melo Trimble, going to the Utah Jazz. So Melo Trimble, a guy that is a good size for a point guard, has had going on his second good season at Maryland now, and you know, he, like I said, big for the position. I think he can drive very well, which can translate into the NBA. He's also a very good shooter. And again, something else that translates into the NBA, I think he's a guy that can develop into being a better passer. I think he's a decent passer right now. But like I said, I think it's something that will develop when he hits the NBA. I think he's definitely going to be a top 10 or top 15 pick. I've seen some mock drafts have him going a little bit lower, but I think he's a guy that will fall into the top 15. All right, so moving to my number 14 pick, and I've got the 6'1" point guard from Notre Dame, Demetrius Jackson, going to the Orlando Magic. Now, Demetrius Jackson, a guy that I really believe is one of the best true shooters in this draft. You know, a guy that kind of replaced Jerian Grant from Notre Dame last year, and you know what? I think he's filled the role well. He's, like I said, great shooter, explosive athlete, maybe a little bit undersized, but he is still a point guard, and he really is a playmaker. You know, like I said, another guy that's really rose up draft boards recently, and I think a team like the Magic definitely could use a point guard. Don't know how much. I don't think Elfrid Payton's. I don't know. I don't know how much longer Elfrid Payton's going to last in Orlando. I think obviously Oladipo is a guy to work around, and I think Demetrius Jackson is a guy that definitely would fit in well in Orlando. All right, so moving to my number 13 pick, and I've got the 6'7" shooting guard from Turkey, Furkan Korkmaz. If I said that wrong, sorry, it's a hard name to get, but I've got him going to the Charlotte Hornets. And now, while the team might sound a little bit weird that he's going to, this is another guy that I could see going higher, but the international guys, you really never know, so a lot of them go further down my list and they might be drafted. So obviously he's a great shooter. He's a good overall scorer. He's got good size for his position and just a high basketball IQ. I think, again, a guy that can really rise up draft boards coming towards the end of the season and kind of be like I guess have a Mario Hezonja-like rise this year. I'm not saying his game's really like Mario Hezonja, but could have a similar rise up draft boards like he did last year. So move on to my number 12 pick, and I've got the 6'10" power forward from Gonzaga, Domantas Sabonis, going to the Washington Wizards. Now I think this is a guy that fits in very well with Washington. Is kind of like the power forward they have right now, Nene, but I think Sabonis is a little bit better. So a couple of things that I like about Sabonis. He's not great on the offensive side of things, but I think he's a guy that could develop to be at least a decent scorer. Not a great jump shot, but he's a great rebounder. He's got good fundamentals and footwork, and he's really got a great work ethic. He's a tough kid. I think he could really fit in with any NBA team. And the Wizards, a team that really is scrappy down low, and like I said, he really seems like a Marcin Gortat and Nene type, and if they do phase one of those guys out, then I think Domantas Sabonis would be a perfect replacement. All right, so move on to my number 11 pick, and this might be a little bit of a reach, but I believe the potential is a little bit luring, and I've got Karis LeVert, the 6'7" shooting guard out of Michigan, going to the Toronto Raptors. Now I know LeVert's had, I guess you could say, a tough time in college. Dealt with injury problems last year, and Michigan not being as hyped up as good as they were hyped up to be last year or this year. But I think Karis LeVert's one of the more intriguing prospects in this draft. He's a great shooter, obviously, one of the best shooters in the draft. He's got great size at the position, 6'7" for a shooting guard. He's a little bit lanky, and like I said, that potential. He's good on both ends of the floor, and that's potential that can be tapped into, mainly on the defensive end of the floor. He's got a little bit more potential that's untapped than on the offensive end. Like I said, a guy that will create his own offense, find his own shots, and that is something that's obviously very valuable. A guy that really could, I think, develop into a star in the NBA. but also a little bit of a risk, obviously, seeing him in college if you do end up picking him, especially at number 11 in the draft. But I think, like I said, a guy that could climb up draft boards, be a very intriguing prospect that a team that might take a risk anyway, come draft day. So, move on to my number 10 pick. I've got Jakob Podol, the 7'4" 1 center from Utah, going to the Sacramento Kings. Now, I know that, obviously, some could argue the best center in the league, DeMarcus Cousins, is with the Kings right now, but there's a very good chance he could not be there by the end of the season. Even if he is still there, then I think Jakob Podol's a guy that could back him up, also play with if they wanted to go with a little bit more size. He's obviously not as good offensively as DeMarcus Cousins, probably won't ever be, but I think he's a little bit of a better defender. Podol, a guy, like I said, great on defense, obviously good size, maybe a little bit of untapped potential on offense, but he's probably also one of the best rebounders in this draft. I think obviously you take him for his defense, his work ethic, and his really proven experience that he's had in college at Utah. All right, so move on to my number 9 pick, and I've got the 6'5" shooting guard out of Kentucky, Jamal Murray, going to the Portland Trailblazers. I think the Trailblazers are a team that really needs help all over the place, maybe outside of point guard. CJ McCollum's come through this year, but I don't know if that's going to be a long-term solution for them. It might be. But even so, I think that Jamal Murray may be a guy, if they want to play a little bit of small ball, they could play with McCollum, Murray, and Lillard. Or Murray just get a guy that can fit in with a fit in as a six-man. But I think Murray's a very, very good player. Guy maybe have fallen down draft boards a little bit. I think when he was first recruited, he was thought a little bit more highly of than he is now with how Kentucky has played this year. But like I said, Jamal Murray, a guy that has got a great scoring touch. He's got good size for his position if he does play at shooting guard. And like I said, a guy that I think will develop a lot more when it comes into the NBA. Kentucky not kind of a hit or miss the last 2 years when it comes to developing players. And you know what? I think Jamal Murray is another one of those guys in this draft that really developed well when it comes to the NBA. Obviously he's kind of a risky take this high in the draft, but I think taking a guy like this will be worth it. So move on to my number 8 pick, and I've got the 6'11" center/power forward from Cal, Ivan Rabb, going to the Milwaukee Bucks. So Ivan Rabb, a guy that is one of the most raw prospects in this draft, one of the most raw talents, but he's got obviously great upside. He's got good size down low and developing post play and just developing player all around. He's a guy that's getting stronger right now. Recruited in that really good recruiting class that went to Cal with Jaylen Brown. And I did see Ivan Rabb in person. He's a guy, like I said, is getting better. Is already drawing double teams, and a guy that's going to command a lot of attention. I think a guy that's going to become a star in the NBA. So I think he'd be a great pick. I think he could go higher than 8. I think he'd go anywhere as high as 4 or 5, depending on how Cal finishes the season and how he does individually. So move on to my number 7 pick, and again, this might be a little bit far down for this guy, but I've got the 6'4" shooting guard / point guard out of Providence, Chris Dunn, going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So if he does come around when the Timberwolves are still drafting, then I think, while Ricky Rubio's had a better year, I think drafting a guy like Chris Dunn gives him so many more options. If they do want to stay with Ricky Rubio, then he could play alongside him at shooting guard, and with the foundation that Minnesota has in place with Andrew Wiggins, with Karl Anthony Towns, then I think a guy like Chris Dunn would be a great gift for them and would really be able to make that push to get into the upper half of the Western Conference. Now, there's a lot of things to like about Chris Dunn. He could have easily gone into the draft last year, but decided to stay another year, develop his game a little bit more. He is a little bit of a raw prospect, but he's great on defense. Really a guy that's good on both ends of the floor, but he's got huge upside. He's athletic and a really great playmaking ability on offense. He's a good passer, can drive, and is also a decent shooter. Like I said, a guy that could go as high as top 3. Actually, I don't know about top 3. I'd say as high as 3 or 4, maybe 3. But I think a guy that really falls in anywhere from 3 to 7 or 3 to 8. So move on to my number 6 pick, and this is a guy that I think has risen up draft boards a little bit recently because of a hot stretch. And I've got the 6'8" power forward out of North Carolina, Bryce Johnson, going to the Denver Nuggets. So this is just one of those picks where I think this is where he falls in ranking-wise right now. Not really a great fit for the team, I don't think. Team that's still got Kenneth Faried right now. But there's a lot of things to like about Bryce Johnson, even though he might not have the best size for the position. He really could create a lot of offense. Had a great game against Florida State a few days ago, 38-point effort. Really showcased the best of his offensive skills. And, you know what, like I said, good scoring ability. He's got, I think, a really high upside on defense. And he is really, really athletic. He's a guy that really, I think, will come along well in the NBA. Maybe will play as a small forward. Can fit in as a small forward on maybe a team that has some bigger guys, and can still maybe play down low a little bit or stretch the floor a little bit if he has to. But anyway, move on to my number 5 pick, and I've got the 7'1" power forward Dragan Bender going to the New Orleans Pelicans. I love this pick if Dragan Bender goes to 5. I think if the Pelicans can get rid of Omer Asik and you can put Dragan Bender inside from Anthony Davis, they have obviously they have different games, but I think that unity would be beautiful. So, like I said, I don't know if Bender's going to go all the way to 5, but he might. Again, a guy that kind of reminds me of Kristaps Porzingis, like draft stock from the last draft. Obviously same size, similar games, but not too similar. Like I said, a lot of things to like about this guy. He's a great shooter, especially for his size. Like I said, a lot like Kristaps Porzingis in that respect. He's got high ceiling on both ends of the floor. And he's just pretty lanky guy that obviously would be a little bit of a project, but he's got good basketball IQ. He's got good basketball experience. So I think a guy, like I said, I really like this pick. If he goes to the Pelicans, I think that'd be a great get for them. And for a down year for them, I think it would be just an absolute steal to be able to head into next year very strong. All right, so moving on to number 4 pick, and I've got Buddy Hield, the 6'4" shooting guard out of Oklahoma, going to the Phoenix Suns. Now, I think from last year to this year, this guy has made as big of a rise and has worked as hard as really anyone on this list. I think if he had gone into the draft last year, he probably would have been a pick between 15 to 25. Might have gone a little bit higher, but really showcased his scoring ability on a national audience, just his overall basketball ability on a national audience against Kansas. I believe it was this past Monday. So, if you didn't already know how good he was. So, like I said, a lot of things to like about Buddy Hield. He works incredibly hard, has worked on his game as hard as anyone, I feel like, over the past 3 years. And he's a great shooter. He really can score on anyone from anywhere. You really got to stay with him. He moves extremely well. He is pretty athletic. And he really can cover anyone relatively close to his size on defense. He's a very good player on defense that really can eliminate a lot of scoring threats. I do really like that pick. If the Suns do have that pick, I think that would be a very good pick for that team. So move on to my number 3 pick, and I've got the 6'9" small forward. I guess you could play a little bit of power forward, but out of Duke, Brandon Ingram going to the Boston Celtics. So I think Brandon Ingram's a guy that could even fall at number 2. But for right now, I think a guy that could really fit in well with any team. Yeah, it's really fun to watch. You really have to love his game if you do watch him, if you watch any Duke game. I think a guy that really is going to be a star in the NBA. Kind of Giannis Antetokounmpo type raw athleticism, lankiness, size. I think will come along a little bit better than Giannis has, though. Anyway, I think, like I said, he's got great size. He's athletic. He's good on offense. He's got that ability to drive, even though he's a little bit lanky. And, I think he's a great shooter. He's got extremely high ceiling. I think he'll be a great get for anyone who gets him in this NBA draft. So move on to my number 2 pick. And I've got the 6'4" shooting guard out of Cal, Jaylen Brown, going to the LA Lakers. I think that this is a perfect pick. I think that Jaylen Brown fits in well with a team like the Lakers. He might fall to about 5 or 6. This is a guy that's, like I said, a lot like Ivan Rabb, but raw prospect. He's very athletic. I did see him in person and Ivan Rabb, if you guys saw. the little Stadium Series tour video I did of University of Virginia. The team Virginia was playing was Cal, and seeing Jaylen Brown was just really a treat. He was great. He's a great shooter, very athletic, got very good movement. Can drive, really can do whatever you need him to on offense. He's also a very scrappy guy that can rebound. Like I said, athletic playmaker, high ceiling, great shooter. Really sums him up. So, move on to my number one pick. Obviously, pretty much the consensus number one pick. The 6'10 small forward / power forward out of LSU, Ben Simmons, going to the 76ers. Now, I kind of hope, just for his sake, he doesn't go to the Sixers, but that might just be what happens. Couple things about Ben Simmons. I'm assuming a lot of you guys have watched him. He's a smart guy. He's got really high basketball IQ, can carry a team. He's good. He doesn't really have a good long distance or long range shot. That might be something that develops, but he's got a very, very good low to mid range offensive game. He's athletic. He's a really, really good facilitator. Can get it off to his other bigs, and you know what? He's great on defense. He's a good rebounder. And I think a guy that really will develop well in the NBA. Obviously, high upside, and really just for a while been the consensus number one pick for the 2016 NBA draft. So, like I said, that concludes my NBA mock draft. A little bit shorter than my NFL mock draft, but like I said, not as much detail to talk about right now because it is a little bit further off than the NFL draft. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention about this draft, obviously, there's a couple guys in here that would be number one picks, or not number one picks for me. That would be probably top 15 picks if they do decide to enter the draft this year. Just a couple guys that come to mind. Skal Labissiere. I think he's going to stay another year at Kentucky. Chuck Diallo. I believe that's how you say it. Like I said, another guy that I think is going to stay another year at Kentucky, Carlton Bragg, at Kansas. Same deal with Carlton Bragg at Kansas. And obviously there's some guys that, could mix into the first round that were just outside. There's a couple other guys that I like. Some guys that come to mind. Caleb Tarczewski. I have a list right here, and I don't know why it's escaping my mind. Malik Beasley, another guy that I mentioned. There's a lot, like I said. Obviously, a couple guys here that might stay another year. Like I said, this is an early mock draft. A little early to tell, but for the most part, I think that one is pretty accurate for what I think it will be. So, like I said, check out my NFL mock draft. I'm going to put that in the link or in the description below. It'll also be in the outro. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yep.